Hi, I want to thank you for signing up for our March Masterclass where we're going to paint the great blue heron. And I decided that I should probably do a little video for you to have you prep your background before we started the class. I don't mind running over a little bit, but I think having our background done ahead of time will make class a little bit easier for us so that we don't have to paint at such a fast pace. So I'm going to show you exactly how I did the background, and I want you to follow along with these instructions and do your background prior to class. So when you come to class, background should be done, dry, and your pattern transferred to it. So I have a canvas here and I'm going to show you how I did the background. So let's get started. The first thing that I did was to transfer just the top shape of the heron. And we need this on our canvas because I need to know where I'm going to put the darkest bit of the background, which is going to come right up from the back of the heron's head and shoulder up to the top of the canvas. So placement of this streak of olive green is going to be really key to getting the drama at the center of attention on our painting. So all we need to transfer at this time is just the top of our heron, and then we will come back after we've done our background and we'll put the whole design on. All right, so I'm going to put some paint out here on my palette, and I want to encourage you to use a lot of paint. So mix up a lot of paint so that you don't run out of it. So I'm putting out some titanium white, and I'm also going to put out some cobalt hue. If you don't have cobalt hue, you could use ultramarine blue. That would work just fine. But let's go ahead and give a nice squirt of that. And the reason that we're putting out a lot of paint is we have a big 12 by 24 canvas, and we don't want to have to stop in the middle of our background and mix up another color. You'll need some burnt umber, and you'll need some pure black. Let's go ahead and put out some other colors that we are going to be needing. You'll need a little pure orange. And I'm also going to put out some Ocean Cruise, which is a nice kind of bright blue color. Now, let's mix up a nice gray color. So I'm going to pull some of my titanium white off to the side. I'm going to add a little bit of pure black to this. And as usual, we'll probably have to adjust how much black we add to our puddle of white so that we get a nice kind of medium value gray color. And I'm just going to get my shop towel close enough so that I can keep my colors on my palette clean when I'm reaching into different puddles of paint. So this background isn't hard, but it takes a while to get these colors mixed and then to do the background on your canvas. So it's best to spend our time doing this by video before we get into the class so that we can just spend our time in class painting that big, beautiful bird. All right, so I've got a nice gray color here, and I want to take part of that and make another gray color. This time we're going to add some blue and brown to this just to alter the tone of the color. So I'm adding some burnt umber. Now you can see I've got a really brownish color here, which isn't unattractive, but we're going to change that a little bit when we add our cobalt hue to that. We want some variety of colors in our background. It's not, it won't be the same as if you just picked up a gray color and completely painted your canvas with gray. That won't be attractive to look at. It won't be visually interesting. So we want to give our viewer some visual interest in the background while keeping it fairly subtle. And to this, I'm going to add a little bit of pure orange to further tone this color a little bit. I'm going to add just a little bit more orange to this. So as you're doing your background, if you get it finished and you're not sure you love it, go ahead and send me an email and attach a photo of your background to the email, and I'll give you some quick feedback before class. But don't everybody send me an email on Tuesday afternoon, because that's not going to happen. So as soon as you get this, let's get some of our background underway. All right, so I'm going to try to move some of this paint and my basin out of the way and my palette over so that I can turn this and give you the best shot of this. Now, if you have an easel, you can definitely work vertically on an easel. That's probably going to be the easiest way to do this, because we are going to want to work up and down and keep our paint going as vertically and as straight to the edges of the canvas as we can. Now, I've got a 1.5 inch flat base coat brush here, which is perfectly fine to use, and I have a 1 inch Folk Art Select firm bristle brush, which is perfectly fine to use here. Either one is going to work great for you. The objective is to get color on the canvas as quickly as we can and get it blended nice and smooth before we move on to the fun stuff. So none of this is terribly fun to get started with, but I am going to dip my brush into water because I want my paint to move very, very smoothly. So picking up my white, and I'm going to just begin on my canvas in long sweeping strokes, stroking on this thinned white. And by thinned white, I just had my brush wet and I'm just thinning the paint as we go. And I'm going to put some more white on here. We're going to have to cover the whole surface of the canvas as quickly as we can, using, again, long sweeping strokes. And got to paint all the way to the bottom of the canvas. Now I'm going to move over here into some of my lighter gray color, and we're going to start to put some of this on and use plenty of paint. Don't be stingy at all with the amount of paint that you're putting on your canvas. If you're stingy with the paint, it's going to start to dry on you, and you'll be stuck with an unblended background, and you will get to start all over again. And I don't think you're all going to want to do that. But you can see how beautifully this darker gray blends into the white that we put on, and I'm simply stroking from the bottom of the canvas to the top and back down. Long sweeping strokes. You're going to get your exercise in doing this background, but in the end it's going to be worth it. So I'm going to take some more of that lighter gray color and I'm going to put some over on this side of the canvas. Everybody's is going to look a little different when you're finished, and that's perfectly fine. And mine that I'm doing right now will look wildly different than this one. You can't do this background the same twice. It simply does not happen that way. And so again, blending in long sweeping strokes. I want all of this nicely blended together. I don't want to see our heron in front of some striped awning of grays and whites. And nice light strokes. Now I'm going to take some of this even darker gray, and I just add a little water to my brush, and we're going to put some of this on over here, and we're going to blend it in. Again, can't stress enough, long light strokes, and we want this to be beautifully blended Put some on over on this side. If you're getting color where you don't want it, you can always pick up your shop towel, give your brush a quick wipe, take some of that excess off, and you can continue to blend. And I want you to notice that my paint is still wet and workable. But this, you can't be chatting on the phone, you can't be playing your word games on Instagram while you're doing this. You gotta put this color on and you've got to commit to it and blend. I'm starting to add a little bit of darkness to the center of the canvas, and I'm softening this in. See right here it looks a little stripy. I'm just going to zigzag across and come back and blend, and the stripy is gone. All right, so let's add a little bit more dark, and then I'm also going to put out a little squirt of, olive green, and this color is fabulous to use. If you don't have olive green, you can make a nice olivey color with sap green plus burnt umber. But look at this, so pretty. It makes like a nice swampy kind of green color. And then we stroke that on and soften it in. Gonna add some more right here in the middle. Stroke it on, soften it in, blend, blend, blend. Pick up some more of that. Working some of that here into the middle of the canvas, and I'm going to just whatever's on my brush put over there, and maybe a little into my darker gray, a little burnt umber, and maybe a little bit of this cobalt hue. So we're changing some of that color up by introducing some of that bright blue in there. And by the time we've added the burnt umber and the gray, it's not that bright anymore. But we'll put some on anyway and blend this in. What we want is a visually interesting background. All right, so I'm taking a look at what I've got here, and I think this is going to be okay for right now. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to hold my canvas upright vertically and very still, and I'm going to spray it. I'm going to have to hold it so I can see it for a moment, and I've got a little spray bottle here, a little spray mister bottle of water, and I'm going to spray along the top of the canvas a bunch of times. And I'll turn this around for you to see. You can see how the color is starting to run and drip, and we're getting some really, really cool little drips of color here and there. And I'm going to, again, flip this back so that I can see what's going on. And I think I'm just going to give it another couple of little sprays. And we're going to simply let this run and drip like it wants to, and we're just going to let it dry. All right, so we have let our runs and drips dry, and our canvas is kind of cooled off. So we're going to go back with the same brush, and we're going to kind of soften up some of these drips. And you see here where I sprayed and kind of washed all my color away. We're going to put some of that back on. So I'm going to go back into my lighter gray color, and I'm going to start at the top of the canvas and sweep some of that down, and then simply pick up water and blend with the water on the canvas. Lots of water action going on here. So we're water over here, more water here. We want to make all of that we put on there just seem a little bit more subtle, a little less obvious. Now I'm going to take a little bit of that darker gray, thin it down some. And we're going to stroke some of that on. And I can let some of that kind of trail off down here at the bottom a little bit, because remember we had more spraying going on at the top, so we lost more of our color up there than we did down here at the bottom. And I'll take some more of that darker gray color and sweep some of that on. Once again, let's keep this paint nice and thin, and we'll stroke on some bluer color over here. And this is simply playing in the paint a little bit. You've got to make sure to keep everything nice and wet and workable. We haven't put any of our, I want to call the right name out here, Ocean Cruise. So I'm going to pick up some of that, which is a nice, it's a much brighter, more intense blue than we've had on here before. So look at how just a couple of little sweeps of that very lightly applied really kind of change the overall look of the canvas, giving you a bit of a variation going on there. And we will take a little bit of our gray color now, and we'll sweep some of that up from the bottom here. I'm going to move this up so that you can really see what I'm doing here. Wet brush, darker color, we're going to sweep that on and let it soften into the painting. You want color variation, but you don't want harsh stops and starts with your color. I think I'm going to leave this area here alone because that's pretty interesting to me. And again, I'm picking up some more Ocean Cruise. And we'll sweep some of that on from the bottom, letting it blend in to our grays and then kind of taper out. And now I'm going to pick up some of that beautiful olive green, and we're going to stroke a little bit of that on from the top down. Sorry about having to move the canvas so much. And again, just a little zigzag motion, and then we can very quickly blend out any kind of stripe that is not pleasing to the eye. This is going to be covered up by a bird, so I'm not worried about that. I'll add just a little bit more dark here with this olive green again, stroking some of that on. We'll put some more on after we've painted the bird, but I want to work some of this into the background, and then again just little zigzag, little softening. My big word of caution for you is if you don't have enough paint and your paint is not wet enough, your canvas is going to kind of dry and grab on you, and you won't be thinking I'm a good teacher because that happened to you. But I'm trying to let you know ahead of time so you can avoid that. All right, so we've got some nice transition colors going on there. And once again, we need to let this dry, and then we're going to put a few accents on before we paint our bird. So we're going to let this dry right now. All right, our canvas is dry, so we've basically done 2 layers of color on there now. And we've got, it's kind of, I'd like for you to think of your canvas as being kind of moody, because I think that's what I was trying to go for, is kind of a very atmospheric, moody background. We've got that with the grays and the greens and things like that. But now we need to add just a few of our bright touches before we start in with the bird. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of Ocean Cruise, and I shifted to my 1-inch flat brush, which is dry, and I'm picking up a small amount of paint this time. And I'm starting over here. I'm going to, let me move this up so we can see. I'm going to lay the brush down and give it a sweep up. And you can see that there's very little bit of the blue that actually showed up there, so I'm going to pick up a little more paint, and we're going to lay this down and kind of pull up a very scant amount of our blue color. It picked up a little bit more up there, perfectly fine. I'm going to add a little bit more down here, and I can sweep this on repeatedly because, as you can see, there's almost no paint on the brush. Got to be very, very sparse with the amount of paint you start with. So adding a little bit of the Ocean Cruise here and there. Add a little bit over here on this side where we started with some before. That was a nice stroke of that. That went on like that. So you're going to have some great sweeps of color and some that are less great, and that's how it goes. You all know that you get what you get and you don't pitch a fit, and this background is no exception to that rule. And for fun, I'm going to pull a little bit of this down from the top so that we have some of our color repeated from top to bottom and bottom to top. So I'm basically going to lay this down. We're setting this on there and just pulling lightly down. You want this color to kind of skim on. If you need more, you can keep applying it and then let it sweep on down. All right, so we're going to shift away from our lovely blues, and I'm going to have you put just a little bit of tangerine on your palette now. And tangerine's a nice light orange color. And we're going to pick up the tangerine on our flat brush, and we're going to pat that color off so that we have a very small amount of tangerine on our brush. And on the left side of the canvas, I don't know, 4 fingers up from the bottom, I'm going to lay this down right along the edge and let that color trail up. And then I'm going to lay the brush down and pull it toward the bottom of the canvas. The objective is to get a nice little bit of an orange accent going on over here. Very, very spotty, very sparse. I'm starting kind of in the middle of the area, and I'm applying the color vertically, going up and down, trying to keep it in a nice, generally restrained area, because we want this to be a subtle accent. We don't want this to be some gigantic honking orange mess over here on this. This is not a safety cone on our painting. So just put the color on and let it soften out a bit. Have some variety in it so that it's not all the same. Move that up a little bit. And again, we're going to get what we get, and we're not going to pitch a fit. Better too little than too much. Keep that in mind. All right, so that's a little bit of an orange accent, and this is where I want you to leave your background. This is basically what your background should look like before class, so you want to do this a few days ahead of time, let it dry, and then transfer your design. So if you have questions or problems, you can email me. My email address is ajones@plaidonline.com. So send me an email. Also, if you're unsure about how your background turned out, send me an email photo of that, and I'll take a look and give you a little bit of feedback on that. All right, so remember, do this a few days ahead of time so it's got time to dry, and then transfer your design using gray transfer paper. All right, I'll see you in class.